I was a trauma nurse at Cook County Hospital in Chicago, and the night that man came through the doors, I thought it would end the way so many others had. Car wreck, broken ribs, blood loss. He was already half gone when the paramedics wheeled him in. I had seen enough of these to know what was coming, but I still did what I was trained to do. Code blue. Compressions. Meds pushed down the IV line. Shock pads slapped onto his chest. Once. Twice. His body jerked, but his heart refused. The monitor screamed flat. The resident called out the time of death, 2:37 in the morning, and I swear to you, in that silence that follows, when everyone's hands drop and no one knows what to say, that man's lips moved. His face sagged, then curled up in a grin. I have worked enough years to know muscles twitch, nerves fire after death. But this wasn't that. This was a smile. Wide, lasting longer than any spasm could. His eyes flickered open like he was pleased about something, like he'd seen something we hadn't. I stood frozen, the bag in my hands, my gloves sticky. Nobody else said a word. We zipped him in and walked out like it was just another case. But I couldn't shake the grin. Later that night, in the break room, someone laughed nervously and muttered, "It was just gas." I didn't argue, but inside I was thinking about my abuela's words. She used to say, the soul leaves the body with signs, and not all signs are good. I grew up Catholic. Prayers in Spanish over every meal, rosaries at funerals. Then I trained in medicine, and I told myself science was enough. Electrolytes, oxygen, organ failure, everything has a cause. But I couldn't explain that grin with science. I tried. I thought about hypoxia, the way the face locks in odd ways when the body shuts down. I thought about nerves misfiring. Still, the memory wouldn't sit quiet. I left that shift with my scrubs stiff from dried sweat, walking out into the cold Chicago air, and I thought about heaven and hell. If people can see angels, why not the opposite? I had seen patients claim to see light, to hear voices of loved ones. I'd always filed that under brain misfiring, hallucinations, lack of oxygen. But this was different. This felt deliberate, like he was letting us know he was glad to be where he was going. And the way that grin stayed, frozen on his face until the zipper closed, it felt like a warning. It's been years. I've coded countless patients since. Some come back, some don't. But when I call time of death, I always look at the face. I can't help it. I look for signs, and when I see peace, I breathe a little easier. But when I see strain, fear, or something worse, I remember that night. I don't talk about it with colleagues. They'd call it superstition. But in the quiet hours when I'm alone with my thoughts, I know what I saw. A man smiling his way into death. And I don't know if that was heaven opening for him or hell waiting with arms wide. I was on call in Dallas at Parkland Hospital, working pediatrics. My name is Dr. Marcus Lee, and even after all these years, the memory of that boy still follows me. He was 6 years old. He'd fallen from a second-story balcony, skull fracture, blood on his shirt, parents screaming as we rushed him inside. I had worked pediatric trauma before. I knew the odds. Head injuries in kids can go either way, and fast. We moved quickly. IV line, oxygen, CT ordered. I leaned down to check his airway, steadying my hands because children shake me more than any adult ever could. And that's when it happened. His little hand reached out and gripped my wrist. Weak, shaking. And he whispered my name. Not doctor, not help. He said, clear as anything, Marcus. My chest locked. My blood turned to ice. He had never seen me before. His family didn't know me. No chart, no prior visits. I checked. There was no earthly way he could know my name. He slipped under right after. His pupils widened, sluggish. We lost him into unconsciousness, and I remember calling for imaging while my own voice shook. His mother sobbed into her husband's shoulder. I kept seeing that moment replay, the way his lips formed my name like he already knew me. For days afterward, I told myself explanations. Kids repeat things they hear. Maybe he overheard my name at the desk. Maybe his parents had said it. But the truth is, his parents were too frantic, too focused on him. They hadn't even asked who I was yet. There was no chance. It gnawed at me. It still does. Here's what makes it worse. I grew up Baptist. My father preached about the Lord knowing each of us before we were formed. I drifted from the church when I chose medicine. I told myself my work was proof that science held the answers. Cells, neurons, circulation, all cause and effect. But that boy knew me, and when he slipped under, I felt like someone else had whispered through him. Like I was being reminded that my name, my being, was known beyond this world. Was it an angel? Was it something else? I don't know. The CT showed swelling. We tried every intervention. The neurosurgeon was paged. The OR prepared. But he never woke. His parents clung to me afterward, begging me for answers I didn't have. They asked if he had said anything. I lied. I told them no. I couldn't give them the weight of what he'd said to me because I didn't understand it myself. That night, when I lay in bed, I thought about predestination, about whether our names are written somewhere long before we arrive. My rational mind said no, it's just coincidence, a fluke. But another part of me, the part that had grown up under stained glass and hymns, felt a different truth pressing in. Maybe the boy wasn't just calling my name. Maybe something used him to remind me I am seen. Even when I want to believe it's only medicine that matters, I can still hear it sometimes. The way his lips moved. Marcus. Like he was calling me from somewhere I couldn't go yet. That memory hasn't left me, and I don't expect it ever will. I was working nights in Philadelphia at Penn Presbyterian, assigned to the ICU. My badge said critical care nurse, but that night, I felt like a witness to something I couldn't put into any chart. We had a woman in her 40s, pneumonia turned septic, kidneys failing, lungs stiff. She was sedated, ventilated, wrists restrained so she wouldn't rip her lines. I'd seen it all before. I believed in protocols, in titrating drips and checking labs, not in anything supernatural. I grew up Catholic but drifted, and by the time I'd logged 10 years in critical care, I'd traded saints for science. The monitor beeped steady. I was updating her chart. Propofol drip stable. Vitals borderline but holding. Then her blood pressure spiked hard enough to make the machine alarm. I ran in, thinking the tube had dislodged. Instead, I saw her body arch against the restraints. Her eyes rolled white, and from her throat came a sound that shouldn't have been possible. Not a moan, not a gasp. Words. Not in English, not in Spanish. Nothing I knew. Guttural, rhythmic, like an old chant from a church I'd never been in. I leaned over to check the tube and heard it right in my ear. It wasn't glossolalia like I'd read about in psych textbooks. It was deliberate. Each phrase fell heavy, like it carried meaning. Another nurse ran in and froze. The resident at the door crossed himself without thinking. We tried increasing sedation, bolus of propofol. Nothing stopped the sound. Her vitals climbed higher, heart racing, oxygen dropping. Then, as sudden as it started, she slumped. Flatline. We started compressions, but she was gone. I filled out the chart with shaking hands. Respiratory arrest, asystole, time of death. No mention of the chanting. There's no field in the EMR for that. Later, in the break room, the resident asked me in a low voice if I'd ever heard anything like it. I said no. He said his grandmother once told him about people caught between, on the edge of death, and how the mouth can become a doorway. He laughed after, but it wasn't a joke. That night, walking to my car, I kept hearing the rhythm of those words in my head. I had left the church long ago, but I found myself muttering a prayer I hadn't said since I was a child. I wanted to believe it was a medical phenomenon. The brain under stress, language centers firing random sequences. But deep down, I felt like I'd brushed up against something old, something darker than bacteria and failing lungs. For weeks after, I dreamed of her face and woke up with the chant still in my ears. Sometimes I think about going back to church. Sometimes I think about how fragile the line is between consciousness and whatever waits beyond. I still do my job. I still chart vitals and hang drips. But I'm not so sure anymore that sedation and ventilators keep everything out. Sometimes, when I walk past a patient on the brink, I swear I hear a whisper, low and foreign, and I keep walking, pretending I don't. I was the cardiologist on call at Jackson Memorial in Miami that night. My name is Rafael Torres, and I've been in emergency medicine for almost 20 years. I've seen the worst heart attacks, the ugliest codes, the full human range of fear and pain, but nothing burned into me the way that man did. He was middle-aged, overweight, a smoker. Paramedics brought him in, already gray around the lips, pupils wide, sweat dripping off him like rain. My team moved fast. Intubation, IV access, defibrillator pads on his chest. We started ACLS protocol by muscle memory. Shock, compressions, meds pushed. I called for more epinephrine, for a second round of shocks. His heart rhythm on the monitor was nothing but chaos, jagged peaks and valleys. And then his body went still. Everyone froze. The monitor still fluttered with the faintest electrical activity, but he had no pulse. I leaned in to check his airway. His eyes snapped open, bloodshot but clear, and he didn't look at me. He looked past me, to the corner of the trauma bay, and raised a trembling hand. He tried to speak around the tube, choking on the sound. We heard the words anyway. "They're waiting for me." His voice cracked, raw. "Fire! Fire! Demons!" One nurse gasped. Another stepped back, dropping the bag valve mask. I felt the hairs rise on my arms. We tried one more shock, but his heart gave out. Time of death called. The room hung in silence. I grew up Catholic. My mother lit candles for saints. My father taught me the body is just a vessel. When I went into medicine, I left most of that behind. I told myself death was just cells stopping, nothing more. But in that moment, looking at the corner where he pointed, I felt like something else was there. Not metaphorically, really there. A darkness you don't see with your eyes, but with something deeper. Afterward, a nurse cried in the break room, said she saw a shadow move in that same corner. I didn't tell her I saw it too, or maybe I didn't see it but felt it, like a cold wind in a sealed room. I went home at dawn and couldn't sleep. My wife asked what was wrong. I told her nothing. I didn't want to spread it. For weeks, every time I intubated a patient or charged a defibrillator, I saw his hand lifting, his eyes fixed on that corner. I tried to reason it away. Hypoxia, hallucination, terminal agitation, classic signs of a brain starved of oxygen. That's what the textbooks say. That's what I tell my residents. But alone, I wondered, what if the brain isn't misfiring? What if it's tuning in? I haven't been back to Mass in years, but sometimes at night I light a candle and just sit. I don't pray exactly. I just sit. Because I'm not sure what waits on the other side. And I've been looking into people's faces when they see it. Some see light, some see loved ones, and some see fire. That night in Miami reminded me there's more going on than my charts can hold. I was on night shift at Oregon Health and Science in Portland, My name is Hannah Clark, and I've worked the ER for a decade. I thought I'd seen it all. Overdoses, shootings, cardiac arrests that dragged on for half an hour before we called it. But nothing prepared me for what happened in Trauma Bay 3. They brought in a young man, early 20s. Overdose. Paramedics said they found him pulseless in a bathroom. No idea how long he'd been down. We started compressions, intubated, slapped on defib pads. The monitor showed nothing but a flat line. We pushed meds, kept pumping his chest. 5 minutes. 6, 7. By then, most of us were ready to call it. I was reaching for the chart to note time of death when it happened. The room lit up. Not the fluorescence overhead. Not a monitor glitch. A glow, soft at first, then spreading until the whole bay shimmered with it. White, clean, almost too bright to stare at. My hands froze midair. Everyone in the room stopped. For 3 or 4 seconds the glow wrapped around us. Then the monitor beeped. A pulse. Strong. Real. His chest rose on its own. We all snapped back into motion, charting vitals, securing lines, as if nothing had happened. But we had all seen it. I could tell by the way no one spoke, the way everyone's eyes darted, but no one met anyone else's. The official record said, Russie achieved at 7:12. Nothing more. But I went home with my hands shaking, not from adrenaline, but from the certainty I had witnessed something I couldn't explain. I grew up without church. My parents were science people. Logic, reason, measurable facts. That was my foundation. When I became a nurse, that fit. Medicine gave me order in chaos. But standing in that room, with that glow filling every corner, I felt something more than order. I felt presence. Not like a hallucination, not like stress. Real, heavy, beautiful. But even in that beauty, there was fear. Because when the glow faded, I felt a chill sweep through, quick but sharp, like a reminder that if light exists, then so does its opposite. Angels or demons, heaven or hell. Medicine doesn't name those things, but I think they stand in the shadows of our bays every night. That young man woke later in ICU, confused but alive. He had no memory of the arrest. He asked why everyone kept looking at him like he was a ghost. I wanted to tell him, but I didn't. Some things you don't put into words. Some things live between us and whatever waits when the machines fall silent. Since that night, I've been caught between what I was trained to believe and what I saw. Science can measure a heartbeat. It can't measure a glow. Faith can promise heaven. It can't explain why terror often walks right beside it. I'm left in the middle. A nurse with hands trained to save lives and eyes that once saw something no chart will ever hold. That was all 5 of them. 5 nights, 5 faces, 5 moments that medicine alone couldn't explain. We carry them quietly because there's no box to check in the chart for what we saw, no line in the code sheet for what we felt. Some of us still tell ourselves it was stress, or hypoxia, or nerves firing after death. Others know better, but don't say it out loud, because in the ER you learn fast that life and death are just the surface. What lies under? That depends on what you believe. I've given you what we saw. The rest is yours. What do you think waits when the monitors fall silent? A science or something far darker, or something far brighter?